Hey guys, Bubba here at the Bubbanews, all in one word, all in one news. Today we're going to talk about the new Trump peace plan and everything he has going on with the Abraham Accords with the new nations joining, including possibly Syria. Because now that the Iran-Israel war is technically over, Trump is all about peace.
The president wants peace. He always has. And right now we're on a diplomatic path with Iran. The president and his team, namely Special Envoy Witkoff, continue to be in communication with the Iranians and especially our Gulf and Arab partners in the region to come to an agreement with Iran. As for our alliance with the State of Israel and that friendship and that partnership between the United States and the State of Israel, I would argue it has never been stronger. And we see a new era in which perhaps some of these Gulf and Arab states can sign on to the Abraham Accords. That was one of the president's most signature accomplishments in his first term, and he'd like to see more of those countries sign on in this second term. And so we look forward to sustaining a long and durable peace in the region, and the president wants to do that through a diplomatic solution. But as he proved on Saturday night, he's not afraid to use strength if we need to do it.
So they're talking all about peace through strength and what they're going to have
peace.
Get going.
He always has.
So this is going to be crazy town with today's video. But you know what? Before we even get going, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Brad Myers. He's one of the lead researchers for Bill Salas. And Bill Salas has been so strong in teaching on the Psalm 83 war, Isaiah 17, Zechariah 12, Ezekiel 38, 39. But last night he was in the premiere with the Things I'm Watching video, and he got my attention, and he said this to me. He said, Pickaxe Mountain, Iran's new hidden nuclear fortress, is located in the Isfahan province, which is in ancient Elam. The Elam prophecy is still coming up, and like I mentioned in last night's video, the Israel versus Iran showdown for 12 days was still stage setting for what is yet to come. Jeremiah 49, 34 to 39. So I started researching about this Pickaxe Mountain. This is nuts. Let's just get right to it, because with Pickaxe Mountain, this is the hidden fortress, and it's been under construction in Iran. And this is known as Iran's secret underground fortress, Pickaxe Mountain. And it's hiding the uranium stockpiles. Iran is secretly hiding the uranium stockpiles that were secretly removed before the U.S. bombed the nuclear facilities. This is just minutes from the Natanz nuclear facility. That was one of the three that were struck over the weekend. However, this deeply buried Pickaxe Mountain site, it's been quietly reinforced in recent years, and it was not targeted. Open source satellite images taken on Thursday and Friday showed lines of cargo trucks last week lined up on the outskirts of Fordo, with the suspicions that Iran was moving the stockpiles of enriched uranium, and they were, because nearly 900 pounds of uranium enriched to 60% purity and above, up to 83.7, has gone missing since the Israeli airstrikes started on June 13th. But keep in mind that Iran has now ceased all cooperation with the IAEA. You know, the UN nuclear watchdog group, the International Atomic Energy Agency. Well, you know, when the Director General of the IAEA asked Iran to explain what was happening deep underground the Pickaxe Mountain, the reply was short and sharp. Iran said, it's none of your business. And up there, they've got at least 4 tunnels and entrances that they can get in and out. This is, actually, I believe there's 8. But I wanted to show you this because I found this video. And Pickaxe Mountain is untouched so far. So the United States and Israel will be going back into Iran. The question is when? It might be soon, because Iran had warned before the Israel-Iran war that any attacks on its nuclear infrastructure would then cause Iran to work overtime to get to a nuclear warhead ASAP. This is Iran's form of deterrence against a nuclear-armed Israel, is having their own nuclear warheads and missile program. Here it is.
But Iran has other ultra-secure facilities to rely on besides Fordo. Tehran has recently been building an even deeper, more fortified site known as Pickaxe Mountain Plant. It is built straight into a mountain just a few kilometers south of Natanz. While Fordo is believed to have 2 tunnel entrances, Pickaxe has at least 4, making it much harder to seal off by bombing. Its underground chambers are also believed to offer more floor space. Iran has barred the IAEA from inspecting the site, so most of what is known about Pickaxe comes from open source leaks and a fair amount of speculation. However, if Iran decided to assemble a nuclear weapon while under attack, this is the place they would do it.
Isn't that nuts? I have a feeling the United States and Israel will be going back because this mission is not done. And a lot of people, you guys might have seen Watchman Rivers' video today talking about, the Ayatollah Khomeini, because he hadn't been seen in public for over a week. So there's a lot of speculation about his condition, but, he did a video today, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But let's get to today's news. And first we're going to start with Isaiah 53, verse 5. And it blows me away that the Jews don't even like this chapter. And here's why. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him. And with his stripes, we are healed. By the Lord Jesus Christ's stripes and by his shed blood, we have been saved and we have been healed. What an amazing God we serve. Oh, man, it's so cool. Check this out, but, Iran ratified a bill to suspend all cooperation with the UN nuclear watchdog, the IAEA. And the Iranian parliament speaker, Bagher Ghalibaf, said that the bill took effect following approval by Iran's guardian National Security Council. So this means that the entire outside world will have zero idea of what's going on inside of Iran's nuclear program. Russia came out and said that they oppose that. They oppose Iran suspending cooperation with the IAEA because they believe that they still need to be in contact with them. And they do, but they won't. We all know how that's going to go. But speaking of how we know stuff's going to go, Netanyahu is expected to head to D.C. for a snap visit to meet President Trump as early as the second week of July in a few weeks. So Minister Ron Dermer has been leading the behind-the-scenes efforts to finalize the upcoming trip. And Bibi will be meeting with Trump and others to discuss how Washington will recognize part of Israel's sovereignty over the West Bank of Judea and Samaria. When I read that and where it says part, where the United States will recognize part of Israel's sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, part sovereignty means complete. I mean, this could get really interesting because Israel continues to move into more of Judea and Samaria and is taken away from the land that the new state of Palestine is supposed to take over and encompass. So that's going to get really wild. But the big news today was all about the Abraham Accords, the Abraham Shield, this Trump-Netanyahu post-Iran war peace plan. I mean, shortly after the U.S. B-2 bomber struck Iran's nuclear facilities, Trump, Netanyahu, Marco Rubio, and Ron Dermer all held a call that they described as euphoric. And before celebrating the strike, they discussed, and even beyond even celebrating this, they discussed a sweeping peace plan for the Middle East. And here are key points of the plan. And this was put out today by Israel Hayam. And it's been shared a bunch, and a couple others have picked up on the story. Actually, a bunch of people have too, but there's 5 points that they put forth. Number 1 is to end the Gaza war within 2 weeks, by the time Netanyahu leaves for the United States. What they're saying is that Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, and others would take over the governance of Gaza, the Hamas leaders would be exiled, and all hostages would be released. Number 2, they talk about voluntary Gaza emigration. Several countries would accept Gazans who choose to immigrate. In other words, move out from Gaza into those other countries. A number of countries in the world will take many of the Gazan residents who ask to leave Gaza and to be able to move into their country. Number 3 is to expand the Abraham Accords. The strong push is going to be for normalization with Syria, Saudi Arabia, and others. Number 4 is a 2-state framework. Israel shows openness to 2 states tied to Palestinian Authority reforms. Number 5 is the United States recognizing partial Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. And the U.S. would back Israeli sovereignty in parts of Judea and Samaria. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. And we're going to get into it deeper just to explain a little bit more. But you know what? The White House today, they came out, Caroline Leavitt, and they said that Syria will be one of the countries that will be joining the Abraham Accords. But that's very interesting to me, at least, because there's still 2 major prophecies coming up regarding Damascus. Isaiah 17, 1 through 14, And the second camera angle found there in Jeremiah 49, verses 23 to 27. So let's try to break this down, because Donald Trump is pushing Netanyahu to conclude the 20-month-old war against Hamas in the Gaza Strip, following the success of the 12-day war against Iran. Even others in Israel are calling for the same thing. For example, Wednesday night, Trump demanded that the criminal trial against Netanyahu be dropped. That in itself is wild. He put out that tweet, and I should have grabbed it. But Trump didn't send out that message on accident. It was also linked to this effort that they're doing. It's part of a larger move that is meant to bring an end to the war in Gaza, the release of all the hostages, and an end to Netanyahu's trial, and a serious regional move. This is the Abraham Accords talking, the officials said. So Trump published a statement to prepare public opinion in Israel for a pardon process for Prime Minister Netanyahu. And the newspaper continued to report that part of the president's plan to end the war is that new countries would join the Abraham Accords, and that Israel would be required to commit to supporting a future state of Palestine. That's huge to get Bibi to accept that. Trump brought up the matter during that euphoric phone call that we just talked about late on Monday, following the U.S. Strikes on Iran's underground nuclear facilities. And according to the phone call, people were saying that the two leaders agreed to wrap up the war in Gaza within 2 weeks, and that would require Israel to halt its military offensive in Gaza, and it would force Hamas to release the remaining 50 hostages. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But Hamas's leadership would then be exiled or banned once they leave Gaza, not to return. And there's 4 Arab states, including the United Arab Emirates and Egypt, also probably will be Jordan. Well, there's some verses that talk about that this would be tasked with jointly governing the Gaza Strip in place of Hamas. So the sources there, they didn't identify the 2 other Arab states that would supposedly govern the territory, but I have a feeling it'll be Saudi Arabia and Jordan. But any Gazans that are wishing to immigrate would be absorbed by several unnamed countries, the paper said. So, I mean, the Arab states have repeatedly said that they will not take part in the post-war rehab of Gaza without Israel allowing the Palestinian Authority to gain a foothold in the Gaza Strip as part of a pathway to a future 2-state solution. And this is a demand that up until now, Netanyahu has flatly rejected. So we'll have to keep an eye on this. And I'm going to scroll into this, but it looks like those in the gray, they're not going to allow Turkey, I don't think, with the Ezekiel 38, 39. And I still can't see these other countries joining just yet. They're still talking Turkey, but part of the plan would be Trump and Netanyahu that Israel would be required to support a future 2-state solution. And this is conditioned on reforms that would be made by the Palestinian Authority. And in exchange, Washington would recognize Israeli sovereignty in some of those parts of the West Bank of Judea and Samaria. Both Saudi Arabia and Syria could then establish ties with Israel under the Abraham Accords. And that's what they're hoping for. Other Arab and Muslim countries would follow suit. But, Saudi Arabia has long said that the establishment of diplomatic ties or normalization with Israel is based on their commitment to a future state of Palestine. So the possibility of peace with Syria, that's been raised repeatedly in recent months, as both countries, Israel and Syria, are in direct contact following the fall of the Assad regime there in December of last year. And prior to Israel's 12-day war with Iran and Israel's extensive blows to Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile program, Trump has been pushing overall for Netanyahu to end the war in Gaza. So now with the Iran ceasefire holding, Trump has really resumed these efforts with Bibi to end the war in Gaza. Trump's demand for Israel to wrap it up, it's being echoed in Israel. Even President Isaac Herzog was saying this. Herzog today urged Netanyahu and the country's top decision makers to act at this quote-unquote key moment following the war with Iran and secure a deal to bring home the remaining hostages. Here's what President Isaac Herzog said. He said, send in all the teams, all the most senior levels, and talk to everyone you need to talk to. Keep working in every way and with all your might until the hostages return to us. This is what President Herzog demanded. So it would be possible to reach a deal within days, and that, because there's very few remaining disagreements between Israel and Hamas over the terms of the deal. But there still is yet to be a breakthrough with regard to these final disagreements, because Hamas is refusing to seriously engage in these talks unless Israel also dispatches a delegation to Egypt. Hamas is not going to send a delegation to Egypt for these talks unless Israel does. So leaders in Jerusalem are holding off on sending a hostage delegation until Israel is able to determine whether or not the war with Iran has any way, shape, or form influenced Hamas to soften its positions. So, I don't know what you guys think, but this whole thing with this whole two-state solution and just all those guys to the left of Mohammed bin Salman, those have not joined the Abraham Accords, but those 3 out of the 4 on the right have, of Trump and Netanyahu have joined the Abraham Accords. So that's going to be really interesting. But, with everything we've been watching, the things going on with this peace plan that's coming up now and this whole push for the two-state solution, that's going to come up again very soon. And it's like all these plans are being put forth. Nothing has been kicked off the table yet. But between these wars between Israel and Hamas, Israel and Hezbollah, Israel and Iran, Israel and the Houthis, this, that, the other, between these contractions and birth pains, everyone keeps coming back and wanting to talk about peace, peace, peace. Trump wants to get his Nobel Peace Prize. Netanyahu wants to make sure that none of the Arabs can hurt his country ever again. And there's some big prophecies that are coming up. Because right now, this whole thing with peace, it may look good in the headlines for today, Thursday, June 26th. But tomorrow, who knows? Because all kinds of wars could be kicking off. Because we know the way the Middle East works, and we know that we're getting so close to the end. And this being 2025, all bets are off. But we know that one thing is certain: Jesus Christ is coming so very soon. And whether or not Trump gets a peace plan, whether or not Netanyahu gets a peace plan, Mohammed bin Salman, that a lot of people are looking at for the Daniel 9:27 thing to bring about a peace plan, or some kind of a ceasefire, some kind of an Abrahamic Accord alliance thing, this could all be setting up for something down the road. And I don't know when this is going to happen. It could be in the next few months. But it looks like they're trying to push this and get this going again this fall. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. But peace plan or not, we know that we are going home to an everlasting peace so very soon. And for that, I bid you adieu. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the moderators. And guys, I thank you so much for your prayers. Keep praying for Mrs. Bubba. She keeps working through her shoulder thing, because we'd like for her to be able to get back to doing what she wants to do and getting out of the house and whatnot. But thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you here, there, or in the air. Maranatha.